I was on the train when I saw the first photo. It flickered onto my screen between a spam email and a grocery store coupon. A wide, pastel-hued shot of my parents' front lawn, covered in folding white chairs. Rose petals scattered along the walkway. Soft, golden light pooling behind the arbor I built by hand. It was my house. Well, it used to be our house. But when you spend 2 years patching drywall, retiling the kitchen, sanding down banisters until your knuckles split, it starts to feel like something more. And now it was decorated. Not for me. There she was, center frame, my sister Claire, in a dress so white it nearly blurred into the edited sky. With Dad holding her arm, stepping out of the doorway, I had painted twice over because Mom said the first shade of eggshell was too cold. I stared at the picture without blinking. There was no caption, just a heart emoji, posted by someone I hadn't spoken to since high school. I scrolled, and scrolled, and scrolled. Photos of her smiling beside the porch railing I had reinforced after the storm. Her bridesmaids, all in blush, sipping champagne under the string lights I hung last fall. My mother, beaming, with her arm wrapped around Claire's. New husband on the swing I installed for her last birthday. But no mention of me. Not in the captions. Not in the comments. Not even in the tagged photos. It was like I'd never been there at all. Which I hadn't, because they never told me. No one said there would be a wedding. Not in the group chat. Not in an email. Not even a text from Claire. And I had spoken to her just 3 weeks earlier. She'd asked me if the plumbing had finally stopped acting up. I'd told her yes. I'd stayed up 2 nights in a row watching YouTube tutorials and ended up replacing the pipes myself. She said I was so handy, with a little laughing emoji. I thought that meant something. It was raining by the time I got to my apartment. Not heavy, just that kind of sad drizzle that soaks your sleeves before you realize you forgot an umbrella. I stood in the kitchen, for a while, still in my shoes, just watching the photo again on my cracked phone screen. Claire's dress shimmered with a pearl tint. I recognized the background immediately. The ivy along the right fence, the garden stones I laid down in spring. Even the porch steps, still slightly uneven, because Dad said he'd fix them but never did. I sat down at the tiny 2-person table I bought secondhand, put the phone face down, and just sat. No one had called. No one had said, "Sorry, it was last minute," or "It was small, only close family," or even the honest version. You weren't invited. Just silence and photos. 3 days passed. Not a word from Claire. Not from Mom. Not from Dad. The wedding album went up on Facebook. It had over 200 likes. There was even a local photographer tagged. It wasn't last minute. It wasn't small. There were cousins I hadn't seen since we were kids. My Aunt Rita flew in from Seattle. My godmother was there, but not me. I walked into my closet that night and just stood there, staring at the canvas bag that held the dress I bought last year. It was meant for Claire's wedding, whenever that would be. I'd gotten it on sale. Navy blue, fitted sleeves. Something respectful, elegant. Something that said, "I'm proud of you, even if we've grown apart." I zipped open the bag. It still smelled like the department store. The tag was still on. I shut the closet door. Not angrily, not loudly, just slowly. Like my hands didn't know what else to do. The next morning, I saw that Dad had updated his WhatsApp status. It was a video. Claire and her new husband dancing, under the porch lights, arms around each other, swaying to some song I couldn't hear. In the background, blurred but unmistakable, was the railing I built. I remembered sanding it for days, trying to hide the water damage after the gutters overflowed. I used the last of my paycheck to buy the stain Mom wanted. Driftwood oak, she called it. I watched the video twice. Then I opened the spreadsheet on my laptop, the one where I tracked every purchase I'd made for the house in the last 18 months. The porch lights. The arbor wood, the garden stones, the exterior paint, the guest bathroom tile. It added up to more than I remembered. I closed the spreadsheet, closed the laptop, and turned off my phone. Not because I wanted to disappear, but because I finally understood. I already had. It started with the ceiling. I remember standing on a wobbly kitchen chair, my arms shaking from holding the roller too long, my hair tied up with a rubber band because I couldn't find a proper clip. The ceiling was off-white and water-stained from years of slow leaks and Dad's temporary fixes. I didn't know what I was doing, but no one else offered. Claire had just moved in with her fiancé at the time, said she couldn't stand the noise of the house, said she needed peace for wedding planning, even though there wasn't even a proposal yet. So she moved out, and I moved in, back home, quietly. Because Mom asked, because we need someone to help out while your father's back is still acting up. Because you know how to fix things. Because you're always so reliable. And I was. Even when no one said thank you. Even when dinner was already served and there was no plate set for me. Even when I came home from work and found Claire's boxes still taking up my closet. There was one week, early autumn, when I thought maybe it was worth it. Mom was in a good mood, humming while folding towels. Dad had helped me hold up the new cabinets while I drilled them in. He didn't say much, but he stood beside me for a long time. And that felt like something. I bought a new rug with the last of my paycheck, and we sat on it in the living room eating takeout that night. Claire called in the middle of dinner. She was upset. Her car battery died and she didn't know what to do. I remember Dad saying, "Ask your sister. She'll come." So I did. I left my noodles on the coffee table and drove an hour in the dark. Jump-started her car in the rain. Held the flashlight while she complained that it was so embarrassing. She didn't say thank you either, just climbed in and drove off. Didn't even wait for me to get back in mine. Sometimes I think the rot didn't come all at once. It came in small things, in Mom saying, "Claire's just sensitive," whenever she snapped at me. In Dad calling her our baby, long after we were both grown. In how they laughed at her tantrums but sighed at my silence. I never made a scene. I just kept working, painted every room, scraped years of old wallpaper off the hallway, replaced the curtain rods, resealed the windows, patched up the stairwell where Claire's high heels had chipped the wood, and no one noticed. Until it was beautiful. Until it was something worth showing off. The last thing I did was hang fairy lights across the porch. Claire sent a Pinterest board to Mom that morning, saying she thought it would look cute for holidays. Mom forwarded it to me with one sentence. "Can you do this before Sunday?" "No, please." No question mark, just an instruction. So I did it. Bought the warm bulbs. Measured the distance between the hooks. Got a splinter in my palm when I pressed. Too hard against the beam. Claire didn't say anything when she saw it. She just took a photo and captioned it, "The house is finally looking alive." I remember reading that word over and over. Finally, as if it hadn't been growing back from the dead under my fingertips for the last 2 years. Now, sitting in my apartment with paint still stuck beneath my nails, I felt that word all over again. Finally. She got her dream wedding. They got their perfect photos. And I, the one who repaired the bones of that house, didn't even make the guest list. There were more pictures now. One of her in front of the kitchen I retiled. One of the guests dancing. Under the lights I hung with blistered palms. One of Mom, smiling so widely I almost didn't recognize her, standing by the front door I stained while everyone else was asleep. They looked so happy, like I'd never existed. I thought about texting Claire, just to ask, not to accuse, just ask, "Why didn't you invite me?" But I didn't. I couldn't. Because deep down, I already knew. I used to think love was helping. That showing up, quietly, reliably, without being asked twice, meant something. That folding towels before Mom noticed, fixing the leaky tap before it got worse, driving Claire's forgotten dress across town before her recital. Those were the invisible threads that held a family together. I only realized years later. I was the glue they used, not the bond they honored. Claire was always the kind of girl people noticed. Loud laugh, big stories, hair always perfect like it had never been touched by sweat or sleep. Even when we were little, people said she had stage presence. I was the one sitting cross-legged with a book in the back seat, while Mom reapplied Claire's lip gloss for family photos. And I didn't mind. Not then. It felt like I had a place. Not front and center, but steady. Essential in the way the backstage crew is to a play. If she was the star, I was the ropes and rigging and lighting cues. I just never thought they'd roll the credits, without even naming me. After the wedding photos surfaced, I did something I hadn't done in years. I logged into my old email, the one tied to our family group thread. It had been quiet for months, but as I scrolled back, I found it. One email stood out like a paper cut. Subject, backyard prep for July 14th. From Mom to Family. I wasn't on the family list anymore, not even CC'd, but I recognized the wording. She'd copied a section straight from the bum. Messages I'd sent her last spring, when we discussed how to treat the lawn soil before laying down the new stone path. They used my plan. My timeline. My gardening schedule. The wedding I wasn't invited to was built from my words. That weekend, I found the receipts. They were in a crumpled envelope labeled home stuff, shoved to the back of the junk drawer in my kitchen. I'd kept them without knowing why. Hardware store totals, paint swatches, delivery fees. I laid them out on the floor, one by one, like puzzle pieces. The total was over $9,200, almost $10,000, all paid out over 2 years. No reimbursements. No thank you cards. Not even a, "We appreciate you." I texted Mom once, just the photo of the receipt spread across my floor. No caption. She left it on red. That night, I found myself staring at the porch swing in one of the photos again. Claire was sitting on it with her new husband, smiling like she built it herself. Like she ever even touched a drill. I remembered measuring the chain links alone in the garage, cursing under my breath as mosquitoes bit my ankles. She posted it with a caption, "Feels like home." The comments were full of hearts and crying emojis and "you deserve it." No one knew the weight of that swing had cracked the wood plank underneath. No one knew I reinforced it with metal brackets and slept in a back brace for 2 nights. They didn't want the work. They wanted the aesthetic. A week later, Claire texted me for the first time in months. "Hey, I hope you're doing well. Just wanted to check if you had the extra drill bit set from last year. I think we left it in your stuff. No rush." Also, the porch light started flickering again. Lol. Dad thinks it's a wiring thing. That was it. Not a word about the wedding. Not even a lie to soften the silence. Just, "Do you still have the tools?" And I realized she only remembered me when something was broken, when something needed fixing, when something she used couldn't hold itself together anymore. I didn't answer, but I opened my spreadsheet again, and this time I added 2 new lines. July 14th, wedding use of renovations, 0 to July 22nd, emotional labor, still. Odai. I closed the laptop and left her text unanswered. There's a strange kind of grief that doesn't scream. It sits in your ribs and settles behind your eyes. It makes your morning coffee taste metallic, and your sleep too light to matter. It doesn't come with tears, just a dull hum, like background static, reminding you you're no longer part of something you used to believe in. That's what it felt like, living after the wedding. Not rage, not sadness, just vacancy, like a locked room in a house that used to be mine. I stopped answering their messages. Not in a dramatic way, I just let them pile up. Claire sent another text about the porch lights, then one about some missing screwdriver set. Mom sent a group photo from a family barbecue I wasn't invited to, with a "wish you were here." That didn't feel like a wish. Dad never texted. He never did. I muted the thread. No confrontation, no announcement. Just silence. I started spending my weekends differently. For once, I didn't spend Saturday morning in the hardware aisle or deep cleaning grout. I walked through flea markets, read entire books in cafes, took long showers without rehearsing, to-do lists in my head. And I started noticing things, like how my apartment, cramped as it was, had no trace of them in it. No furniture they chose. No photos they framed. No tools that would one day disappear when they needed them again. It was mine, all mine. And it didn't ask anything of me. One night, I dug through my closet and found the old navy dress, the one I bought for Claire's wedding before I knew I wouldn't be going. It was still wrapped in plastic, still holding hope in its seams. I took it out, hung it on the back of the door, stared at it for a long time. Then I picked up a pair of scissors. Not out of anger, just clarity. I cut a straight line down the middle, from collar to hem. It felt clean, like slicing away something that had been clinging to my ribs for too long. I folded the fabric into a box and set it in the hallway. Tomorrow I'd drop it at the donation bin near the park. Let someone else make something beautiful out of what was never mine to begin with. A few days later, Claire called. I watched the screen light up, her name blinking. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. I listened. "Hey, not sure if you're mad or just busy, but the wiring's still acting up and we don't want to mess it up ourselves. Can you come by sometime this weekend? Mom said you probably know what to do. Just, yeah, let me know." She didn't say my name, didn't say sorry, didn't even say thank you, just assumed I'd come. Instead, I booked a train, a short trip, 2 hours north, to a town I once visited during college. I remembered a used bookstore with creaky floors and a lake with green benches. I didn't have a plan. That was the point. For once, I wouldn't be anyone's safety net, or repair woman, or ghost. Just a girl with chipped nails and a quiet suitcase. The night before I left, I got one more text. From Mom. Please don't be dramatic. This is your family. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then, slowly, steadily, I typed back. I was never dramatic. You just never listened unless I fell apart. And hit send. No emoji. No explanation. Just truth. The town was smaller than I remembered. A single blinking streetlight near the train station. One cafe, its windows fogged with cinnamon sugar steam. The bookstore was still there, older now, maybe dustier, but familiar in the way certain silences are comforting instead of cold. I walked for hours, not aimlessly, not searching, just finally quiet in a way I hadn't known I was missing. There was no to-do list in my pocket. No one waiting for me to fix a hinge or replace a breaker or pick up a phone call they wouldn't return. Just me, and a sky that stayed open even after the sun set. I stayed in a rented room above a florist's shop. The walls were paper thin, and I could hear the owner's dog scratching at the back door every morning. I liked it, the normalness of it, the realness. Each night I wrapped myself in a thick quilt and read under a warm lamp. I left my phone in airplane mode, not as punishment, just permission. Permission to exist without their voices in my ear. On the third morning, I checked my messages. 3 missed calls from Claire, 1 from Dad, which felt like a glitch, 2 texts from Mom. We really need your help with the lights. Claire's worried it could be a fire hazard. Can you please stop acting like this? You're punishing everyone over a misunderstanding. I let the phone fall back onto the nightstand. Punishing. Funny how silence suddenly becomes punishment to people who only ever noticed your noise when it served them. That evening, I sat by the lake. The one with the green benches. There was a couple, nearby, whispering under a shared scarf, their thermos steaming between them. I didn't feel envy or loss, just stillness. I thought about all the time I had given, without asking for anything back. All the weekends spent elbows deep in paint, all the nights I skipped sleep to finish projects Claire would later compliment like she was part of them. All the birthdays that were forgotten, the holidays I was expected to host but not celebrated in, the years I blended into wallpaper because they needed someone steady, not someone seen. I'd mistaken use for love. My phone buzzed again. I turned it face down. This time, I didn't even read the message. Instead, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the paper I printed before leaving. A list of small rentals. Places with character. Ones that needed care. Not because I wanted to fix something, but because I wanted to choose what I gave my care to. I circled one with a red pen. Small cabin, lake view, needs cosmetic TLC. Affordable. For the first time in years, the thought of building something didn't ache. It didn't feel like bleeding. It felt like reclaiming. That night I posted one photo to my stories. No caption. Just a shot of the lake, sun setting, green bench in the foreground. A minute later, Claire replied, "Where even are you?" I didn't answer. I just let the message sit there, unread, like I had for all those years. Like I did every time they walked past me to hug her first. Every time they called her the bride, like that meant she'd earned the family. Every time they asked me to fix things, and never asked how I was holding up. The next morning, I packed my bag. Not to go home, but to go forward. They kept calling. I didn't block their numbers. I didn't delete their messages. I just stopped answering. The phone buzzed like a wasp in another room. Buzzed like guilt they wanted me to carry. I left it there. Some days I opened the texts, not to respond, just to witness them trying. Claire sent voice notes now. Her voice sounded thinner, a little rushed, like someone who isn't used to being ignored. Okay, I don't know what's going on. I get that you're upset, but this is your family. You don't just disappear. We looked for the receipt on the arbor wood. It wasn't in the drawer. Did you move it? There it was again. Even in her worry, she was reaching not for me but for something I could provide. Not, are you okay? But, did you move what I need? Mom called once at 1:13 a.m. I didn't hear it ring. I was already asleep for once, under the softest blanket I'd ever owned, one I bought in a shop where no one knew my name. The voicemail was short. This is getting ridiculous. We're not perfect, but you've always taken things too far. Not I miss you. Not I'm sorry. Just that same familiar tone, the one that calls your pain dramatic while applauding someone else's joy. I stayed away longer than I planned. 2 weeks. Then 3. I rented the cabin I circled in red. It wasn't much. Peeling wallpaper, a back door that didn't lock properly, a heater that clicked like it had secrets. But it was mine. It wasn't borrowed. It wasn't inherited. It didn't come with expectations tucked under the floorboards. I bought my own tools, hammer, drill, paint trays, same brands I used at the old house, but this time the receipts had my name on them. It took 5 days to strip the wallpaper. My fingers bled the same way they did when I fixed Claire's bedroom wall that summer she had a meltdown and kicked a hole in it. But this time, the blood didn't feel like a sacrifice. It felt like reclamation, like every inch I scrubbed clean was a part of me I'd buried under their needs, under their weddings, their parties, their emergencies. On the 6th day, I got a letter. Real mail, not digital. A thick cream envelope addressed in my mother's handwriting. It had no return address, just my name. Not even dear. Inside was one photo, a framed shot of Claire and her husband under the arbor, the one I built from pine and coated with sealant in the rain. Someone had scrawled on the back, "It turned out beautiful. You would have been proud. Not thank you. Not, we're sorry you weren't there. Just, you would have been proud." As if I hadn't already been forgotten, as if the pride could replace the presence. I burned it. Not in a rage. I just lit the corner, held it over the sink, and watched it curl into black lace, because I was proud, not of them, of me, of walking away, of not begging, of knowing when to stop showing up just because they knew I always would. That night, I walked to the edge of the lake with my phone. I stared at the list of texts. Claire, 17. Mom, 11. Dad, 3. I didn't open them. I just pressed archive. one after another, not erasing, just shelving what I no longer needed. I let the silence spread like paint across a bare wall. It wasn't revenge. It was peace. It was early morning when I saw the message from Dad. Just one line. No punctuation. "We miss you." It didn't sound like him. Not exactly. He wasn't the kind to admit absence, or need, or anything that might peel back the skin of pride he wore too tightly. Maybe Mom had typed it for him. Maybe he meant it. But the funny thing was, by then it didn't matter. Not because I didn't still ache in small, buried ways, but because I no longer needed their language to feel real. The cabin started to come alive by the 4th week. I repainted the kitchen in soft, stormy green, replaced the warped tiles with old slate I found in a salvage yard, sanded the floorboards, so smooth they felt like calm underfoot. For the first time in years, I woke up and didn't dread the weight of being needed. There was no one knocking. No one assuming I'd pick up where they left off. Just quiet, the kind that healed instead of hollowed. Then came the email from the mortgage company. I opened it twice before reading the full thing. The subject line alone hit like an old bruise. Notice: address update and ownership confirmation. Windsor House, Windsor House. That's what they called it now. A house I bled for. Scrubbed. Leveled. Repaired until my palms cracked. The email confirmed a change in co-ownership. Claire's name added. Mine removed. No request. No conversation. Just a system update. They'd taken me off the paperwork. I wasn't even surprised. The betrayal had stopped shocking me months ago. Now it just settled over me like dust. Expected, soft, unshakable. I didn't reply. But I logged into my old shared cloud folder, the one with all the renovation photos, budgets, measurements. I created a new folder inside it and titled it Reclaimed. Then I moved everything else there. Locked it with a password, not to be petty, to be free. They could have the house, but not my hands, not my plans, not the invisible blueprint they depended on like air. That weekend, Claire called again. No voicemail this time, just the missed ring. A few hours later, a text came in. The front porch light is out again. Not sure what Dad did wrong. Can you send the diagram you used? Or maybe just stop by for a minute. For a minute. After all these years, that's what my presence was reduced to. A utility. A tool. But I wasn't a wrench they could hang up until needed, so I typed one line back. You'll have to figure it out without me this time. And pressed send. No apology, no spite, just distance. The kind I'd earned. Later that night, I stood on my own porch. Not Windsor's, but mine. The air smelled of pine and old rain. The porch light above me glowed steady. No flicker. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for anyone to be proud of me. I looked out at the dark stretch of woods, quiet, unused, undemanding, and I whispered, not to anyone but myself, I'm not angry, I'm done. The first snowfall came quietly. No fanfare, no warning. Just the gentle hush of flakes against the windows, the world outside turning pale, softened at the edges. I stood by the cabin door with a mug of coffee in my hands and watched as the frost dusted the porch rail I had sanded bare just a week before. There was something sacred about how snow made everything still. like a pause in a song that finally lets you breathe. No one knew where I was now, and for the first time in my life, no one felt entitled to. Claire stopped texting. It didn't happen all at once. The messages just thinned. First came the delayed replies, then the cold okays, and then nothing at all. It was never about reconciliation. It was about access. Once I stopped being useful, I stopped being real. Mom sent one last message 2 days before Christmas. We're setting a place for you just in case. Don't make this permanent. As if this was a tantrum, a phase. As if my absence was something I'd eventually feel guilty for. But I didn't, because I knew the truth. They only set places for me when they needed chairs filled. Not because they wanted me seen. On Christmas morning, I walked to the lake. Alone. I watched the ice creep slowly across the surface, thin and tentative. The air bit at my knuckles, but I didn't flinch. I stood there long enough for my breath to fog the collar of my coat, and then I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a letter. Not to them. To me. I sat on the bench and scribbled, on a page torn from an old sketchbook. You don't need to prove you're enough. Not through labor, silence, or sacrifice. You can build beauty just for you. I folded the letter, placed it under a stone by the bench. Let the wind carry the rest of what I'd been holding. They never apologized. Not really. Claire posted a photo on New Year's Eve, her and her husband under the same porch lights, now sagging slightly. The caption read, "Grateful for the memories we built here." I didn't flinch, because they didn't build them. I did, and I took nothing with me. Not the receipts, not the paint swatches, not the proof, because I didn't need them. To know, I needed me to remember. In spring, I planted a small garden behind the cabin. Nothing big, just lavender, rosemary, and a single peach tree. I laid the stones myself, bent my knees into soft earth. Let the soil get under my nails, but this time, it wasn't a service. It was a ceremony. Somewhere, they probably still tell the story like I walked away for no reason. That I made things difficult. That I overreacted. But the truth is, I didn't walk away in anger. I walked away in clarity. I stopped begging to be seated at a table where I was always asked to serve, never to eat. And I didn't slam the door behind me. I just built a new one, painted it blue, and locked it from the inside.